Good morning. A little different video this time. We are here at the Washtenaw County Sheriff's Department, where they're going to be somewhat dismantling a couple of hundred years of history. So we're going to try to document that beforehand and turn it over to Harry Valentine, who is the absolute historical expert here at Washtenaw County. He's actually spent almost a decade putting together not just the Hall of Honor, but also the history that we're going to be going through. Harry, it's all yours.
Okay, well, we'll start with the Hall of Honor. Back in the late 60s, early 70s, under the Harvey administration, 4 deputies lost their lives from different circumstances. And they had plaques that commemorated their service, and those plaques were taken down for remodeling. So we decided that eventually it was decided the plaques were going to go back up, but they didn't know where. This used to be a large open air lobby, and this back wall was part of it. And we'll step inside where it's a little bit quieter and you can see what we have done. We turned this into the Hall of Honor. Myself and Bob Losey began talking about where to locate our plaques and our information and how to create this hallway. Sheriff Clayton contributed money, the unions contributed money, and with a budget of about $4,000 in 6 months, we created the Hall of Honor to honor those 4 officers, which were Deputy Crampton, Deputy Borders, Deputy Russo, and Deputy Ewald. And so what we did, the plaques were originally donated by Washtenaw Cemetery, and they used to hang at the Ann Street facility when the sheriff's office was there. Later they hung at the facility at 2201 Hogback, which was the old Holy Ghost Seminary and the administration offices. Then they hung on this back wall of an open air lobby. We decided it was best to bring them back home, and so we brought them here. And part of the project included rubbings from the only wall in the state of Michigan at that time that contained the names of all the fallen, which was in Oakland County. And we had Arnett's come in and refurbish and remount the plaques. Then we located family members and did interviews with them about the deputies so that we could tell their story, not so much of how they lost their lives, but how they lived them and what they meant to others. And of note, in Harold Ewald's case, we located his 100-year-old widow. And the families, we took a photographer with us. The families shared memorabilia with us and stories and information. And within 6 months, we did a dedication of this hall with an honor guard and a ceremony. Sheriff Clayton was very instrumental in helping to set that up and facilitate it. We have uniforms from the periods in which they served. They're arranged as much as like you would have an honor guard with a color guard, which would be holding the flags. So we arranged them that way, and they're from, like I say, the periods in which they served. It's kind of a reminder to those who come through here not to dishonor the uniform. We have a flag down here which flew over our nation's capital, which is on display, and they read a proclamation into the record about this hallway and the fallen officers. And as a result of the work that Bob Losey and I did, and many of the other members of the Sheriff's Department that helped us, it spurred the sheriff to want to do a history project. And he asked me if I knew how to build a museum. I told him I didn't, but I would learn. And because there's been 200 years of history with the Washtenaw County Sheriff's Department, 46 sheriffs have served here through the years with many events and different cases and history, both good and bad. And we've documented it, found artifacts, and put them on display. And we'll go see that in just a second. I don't even remember what happened. This is the Washtenaw County Sheriff's Department, or Sheriff's Office, if you will. They call it the Hall of History. It is actually a museum which contains memorabilia, photographs, and different things commemorating the service of different sheriffs within Washtenaw County and the history of the agency. And what you're actually looking at here is on this wall is information about all the different sheriffs that have served in Washtenaw County, starting with Benjamin Woodruff, who was the very first sheriff and founder of the city of Ypsilanti. And he went to Territorial Governor Lewis Cass and asked to be postmaster, and he said, well, you're also going to be sheriff. And he began serving as the first sheriff. The first government building built in Washtenaw County was the county jail, which was built in the area of Huron and Fifth. And it was built out of logs. It was kind of a interesting facility because you would book your prisoner in during the day and he would be gone by supper time. They wasn't a very secure facility. The second sheriff you have is Daniel Brown, and what Daniel Brown is noted for, his family farm is where Michigan Stadium sits today. So he was there, and he was a land speculator, and with William Thompson, William Maynard, and Charles Thayer, donated 40 acres to be the central campus for the University of Michigan. Another interesting sheriff would be our third sheriff, William Anderson. And the interesting thing about William Anderson is he was involved in a feud with probate court judge Robert Wilson. And the two of them exchanged very, I guess you would say, I don't want to use the word derogatory, but they both slammed each other's characters in letters to the editor of the Ann Arbor paper. And this kept going back and forth, and finally Anderson built a Greek revival house. Not to be outdone, Judge Wilson built a bigger Greek revival house. I don't know how the feud ended, but that house is still in use today. If you look at some other sheriffs, you have Myron Webb, who was a sheriff from 1871 to 1872, and sheriffs back during that time, up until the time Michigan became a state, were appointed and served 2-year terms. Webb is famous for, he lived in Saline, didn't like to go to the city of Ann Arbor, where the sheriff's office was located, so if there was a problem in Ann Arbor, he sent his deputies. He only served 1 term, and I guess you could see why. And you have Sheriff Josiah Case, and the interesting thing about him is he captured grave robbers who were actually stealing bodies and selling them to the U of M School of Anatomy. And how that story went was there was a man in Erie, Pennsylvania who buried his brother. The next day he went to the cemetery to put flowers out, only to discover that the body had been dug up and removed. He contacted the Erie PD police chief. He launched an investigation and discovered that a large container had been shipped by railroad marked fish and had been sent to an address in Ypsilanti. He telegraphed the Ypsilanti marshals and asked them if they could check it out. They said the address was false, and so what ended up happening was it was turned over to the sheriff because it was, he later developed that the address was in Ann Arbor, and when he went there he discovered it was the head of the School of Anatomy who had purchased the bodies for $6. So not only did they recover the body at the School of Anatomy, they also recovered several others, and it led to some laws which dealt with grave robbing and the sale of human remains. It's pretty interesting to note also we have a sheriff, when you think about this, you have Sheriff Michael Brenner from 1893 to 1894. And he was caught a gentleman who was stealing all kinds of horses and horse tack, had a whole barn full of it down in Ohio, and the reason he discovered it was because he read a newspaper article about this man being arrested in Hillsdale and followed up on it. But where his other claim to fame comes in was one winter they had a deputy shot in the village of Dexter. And he got into his horse and buggy and, armed with his Winchester rifle, rode out there in bad weather to deal with the situation, only to find that the suspect had fled to Plymouth. So he rode in the bad weather on his horse and buggy all the way out to Plymouth. They didn't catch the suspect, and upon his return to Ann Arbor, the one thing he did catch was a serious case of frostbite on his feet, because back in those days they didn't have any heated vehicles. We have all kinds of different sheriffs here with their stories. We have Jacob Andrews and Sheriff Klager, both of whom were sheriffs who died in office. They were the only two, and it was from illness, not from any kind of illegal activities. You have Sheriff Douglas Harvey, who was known as he was a stock car driver, and during his tenure he had the Michigan UFOs in 1968, the Michigan murders with John Norman Collins, student protests and riots where they actually dynamited a CIA office and the draft board. He lost 4 deputies in the line of duty. He started a K-9 unit, revived the mounted unit, and started a tactical mobile unit to deal with the civil unrest that they were experiencing at the time in the city. And you also have Jerry Clayton up here. He was the first African-American sheriff. So we put all that history together on here. You have sheriffs who, like Sheriff Osborne and Sheriff Peck, who served in the U.S. cavalry chasing Pancho Villa on the Mexican border, then went to World War I, and then came back to Ann Arbor and became sheriff. So that's our wall with the sheriffs on it, and people can read about it and see what they see. Behind you, you will notice that this is, you see these logos. These are actually models of the door shields that were on sheriff's cars. And if you go down the hallway, you'll notice how they change. Well, we have a frame right here that tells what years those logos were on the cars, and then period pictures around them. So this is like from the 1940s through 1950s. And you can see here is a handbill for Jacob Andrews, who ran for sheriff. He served for roughly 10 years, and this is a handbill for his political campaign. We have a variety. One picture I really like is this one over here on the left side. In this picture, this is the Sheriff's Department in the 1930s. In this picture are 3 sheriffs, but none of them know it. You have Sheriff Andrews, who passes away in office, Sheriff Osborne, the undersheriff, who assumes his role, and then over here is Erwin Klager, who later runs for sheriff after Osborne leaves and becomes sheriff. So you have 3 sheriffs that are sitting there in one picture, and yet they didn't know about it. Here in this curio cabinet, we have various items, badges. Of note, we have keys that were for the old jail on Ann Street. Right here, and this badge is a detective's badge, which in the little case, he carried it in his pocket, and they would pull it out and flash it when they wanted to say that they were the police. You have various headgear from through the years, whether they were wearing campaign hats, Stetsons, or the Garrison hat, or under the Harvey administration they had to wear helmets. And
it goes back to his stock car racing days.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was.
And we had some good patrol cars back then.
Oh, yes. Large engines. You have the small little sap that detectives used to carry in their pockets for when they were dealing and they got into scuffles with arrestees or had issues they had to deal with. Behind you, over here, you have a display of handheld weapons. From the old, the nightstick was from Deputy Stanley McFadden, and one of the saps, and one of the other saps came from Harley Ryder. So we put those on display to kind of show the different items, the impact weapons that were used back in the day. Now, of course, it's tasers and pepper spray. So times have changed. They've been electrified, I guess you could say. Here we have a cabinet, just like we have one out in the lobby. And what's on display here is the Sheriff's Department had a mounted unit. They don't at the moment because it mostly consists of volunteers who have horses and some deputies who do. And they've won many awards, as has our K-9 unit. And they had no place to display them, and we thought it was a good place to bring it into the hallway and to put one in the lobby to show all their accomplishments and what they've done, because they really are a first-rate unit of the agency. Up here we have officers who have won the Washtenaw 100 Officer of the Year. We have more on display in the cabinet out in the lobby, but these are some of the older ones. We didn't want to forget them, because that's what's really important about this hallway, is that once you are a sheriff's deputy, you're always a sheriff's deputy, and it's nice to be remembered. Behind you is the door shield for cars from 1954 to 59, with pictures of George Peterson, who was sheriff, and I think Sheriff Peterson never met a camera he didn't like, because I have a lot of pictures of him and his deputies and different things. He was always having his picture made, but that's the way it was. And right there, the picture on the left is a picture of the Sheriff's Department in the 1950s when he was sheriff. This blue uniform was from the period of the, would have been from like the 40s into the 50s. This uniform was worn by Claire LaFerrier, who was the undersheriff. He started out as a deputy, became a sergeant, went up the ranks, and he eventually became an undersheriff under Sheriff Harvey. And this is complete with a period badge here that was donated by Undersheriff Mark Potasic. And the nightstick again is an original from the time. In the hallway you'll find monitors, and we have different monitors to do different things. We have so many pictures we can't hang them all, so what we do is use the monitors to show photos, and this particular monitor shows, we call it From the Files of WCSO. And this covers everything from Sheriff Brenner riding in his buggy to capture the man who shot the deputy and getting frostbite, all the way up through the Dexter tornadoes, the crash of Flight 255, anything we were involved with. But one of the neatest stories, which I think is the most humorous, is we call it the case of the Glass Swan. And what it involved was a deputy by the name of Max Pete. Max Pete was working one day when a glass salesman came in and reported that his vehicle had been stolen, and he sold glass figurines to stores, and he had his whole inventory in the trunk of his car. Well, they went out and with 2 state policemen, they located the car, which resulted in a high-speed pursuit and a shootout. And when you look at the pictures of the car, which will show up on the monitor here eventually, what you'll see is there's no fewer than 75 holes in the back end of that car. Now, it's not known what happened to the suspect, and no officers were hurt. However, when they opened the trunk, the casualties were all the glassware that was in his trunk, except for a glass swan, which he gave to Deputy Pete as a souvenir, and the family has retained it to this day. And so they gave me that, and we put so everything is covered in here, from different events, the Michigan murders, the torch murders, which occurred in the 1930s, which resulted in a crowd of over 20,000 people surrounding the county courthouse, demanding to administer justice to the suspects who committed it. It's a very interesting story, which you can find online. Down below it, we have a plaque for Deputy Charlie Stewart, which was donated to us. This is an actual tile from the county jail at 119 Ann Street. Charlie was a deputy there, and one day he accidentally discharged a carbine as he was walking down the steps, and he blew 2 holes in the tiles out in the lobby. Fortunately, no citizens were injured and nobody was hurt. However, we retained the tile and put a picture of Charlie with it, and he became known as Charles Boom Boom Stewart, the Marksman of the Year. And this was something he treasured and hung on to and passed down, and it's been shared with us, and we kind of put it here for everybody to kind of have a look at. This over here is a display for our tactical mobile unit during the riots of the 60s. A lot of sheriff's departments, there was a lot of unrest due to the Vietnam War, due to race relations, and there was a need to have units that specialized in dealing with crowd control, and a lot of sheriff's departments had them. And Sheriff Harvey organized the tactical mobile units, so that's a display for them. This over here is very interesting. This is the Pig Bowl, and the Pig Bowl was a full contact tackle football game between the sheriff's office and the Ann Arbor Police Department. And what it started was a detective by the name of Bill Gillis wanted to do something nice for children, underprivileged children, for Christmas, and he suggested the football game. So the Sheriff's Department fielded a team which was trained by Eastern Michigan University and equipped by them. Ann Arbor was trained by the University of Michigan and equipped by them. And a gentleman donated this milk carton or milk container right here, which is about 113 years old. And he donated it to the cause, and they painted it up, and it became the Pig Bowl trophy. And this was a very, very serious contest. Today you talk about community engagement. Well, really this was community engagement. They had, the whole city was involved in it. There were news articles that were written about it. They swiped the trophy. The deputies went in one night, and they had a deputy pretend to be a disorderly drunk, and when the Ann Arbor desk officer stepped out to deal with him, they slipped in and stole the trophy, only to have the Ann Arbor police come down with the fire department and hang a pro-police banner on the side of the jail. So they were known as the Goats because Chief Krasny at the time said, well, we're the Goats every time, they blame us for everything. And Harvey says, well, they always call us pigs, so we'll be the Pigs. And that became the Pig Bowl. And this original helmet comes from Dick DeGrand, who played for Ann Arbor and wore it in all 4 games. This is a replica Eastern Michigan University furnished to us of what the helmets would have been like that the deputies wore. And this is an actual jersey worn by Joe Yakulis. And when you stop and figure out how much money they raised by today's terms, they would have raised roughly, on that 4-year period, $150,000.
The one thing they don't have in there is replicas of all the casts of all the injuries that happened during those games.
That's why the games ended up, Chief Krasny met with Sheriff Harvey, and he says, we can't afford to have deputies and policemen sitting on park benches feeding pigeons while they nurse their injuries. He says, we need them on the streets. So the game eventually ended, and now you have Shop with a Cop and various other fundraising efforts. So yes, it's now they have, like I say, other fundraising efforts that do this, that are less strenuous on the officers. But this was it was quite a serious thing in the day. I mean, they really played all out for it. And if you talk to any of the guys that played in it, that's just exactly what they will tell you, that it was an all-out deal. But it was a lot of fun. They distributed a lot of toys to children at Christmas time. It was a good thing. We moved down here. You got the next changing of door shields again. This is from 1960 to 65. The Sheriff's Department at that time was still located at 119 Ann Street, which is now a parking structure. And these are photos that were taken during various disturbances, and you can see one with Sheriff Harvey with his bullhorn and directing his officers. The old junior deputy bus, which was used to not only to transport the youth group around, but it was also used to haul people to the county jail. So it kind of got double duty. But it was a very tumultuous time and a very wild time.
There were a lot of sheriffs through Washtenaw County, but of all of those, I think that Doug Harvey had it during certainly the most interesting times. And while there have been a lot of sheriffs, there's only been one, the sheriff. And
he was always known as the sheriff.
Yeah, a lot of us consider Doug Harvey as a true leader.
He was a very charismatic, bigger-than-life type person, and really had a lot of things happen while he was there. And it's very interesting, his tenure. Behind you, we tried not only to sit there and commemorate the past, but these are the people that are making history. As they go through and do their jobs, they're the people that someday their stories will be told on monitors or in pictures. So when they present awards and they do an awards ceremony, we have this wall for them, and they put their pictures up here. And then next year, when there's a new batch of award winners, these will be taken down and given to them, the pictures will, so that they can have them for their files or for their memorabilia. The uniform next to the wall there, that is what tactical mobile officers wore back in the 60s. That's the vest has the steel inserts, and they always had the helmet and the large stick and the fatigues, and you'll notice the leather gear with the dunk pouches and the holster for the revolver. I'm absent a strap on that, but that's what the officers wore, and when they had to deal with disturbances on the street. And if you move down here, this is a very interesting cabinet, because in it we have the only Thompson we have left. We used to have two, we now only have one. And we also have the 240,000th M made by GM Powertrain, which we've had for a long time. We also have in here, if you notice on top, these are again keys to the old jail on Ann Street, which was donated by Sergeant Charles Anderson. Up on top, we have they call these hood signs. And the Sheriff's Department used to have these on their cars. And this one came off of a Sheriff's Department vehicle. It was donated by Lieutenant Brian Miller. And we had it electrified by Preston Koenig, who works on those kind of things. This was electrified when he brought it in to light up. It was originally over a deputy's bar in his basement, but the wiring left a lot to be desired. And so we had it refurbished and with LEDs. And these lights, this is back like they used them before the reflective door panels that we have today. And they would do what they call a side stop. They'd pull up next to the car, turn the light on, you'd see it was the sheriff, and they'd motion you over. We also have the original Ypsilanti Press front page from when John Norman Collins, the co-ed killer, was found guilty. The book in there, Michigan Murders, written by Edward Keyes, is an autograph copy which he autographed for Pam Reese, who was the administrative assistant. And that picture is of her and Lieutenant Mulholland, who was one of the lead investigators on it. And there's a picture of Collins as he been booked into the county jail. Down below, you'll see the blue Kojak light, which what we called it for the detectives. They used to put those on top of their cars, and as they would go to scenes. We have the old .38 revolver, like the Chief's Special, and the .357, plus one of the kits that they use for firearms. And the interesting thing is, you'll see that flashlight there. That flashlight is what they call in England a dry battery torch. And it's made by the Concordia Electric Safety Lamp Company of Cardiff, England. And that flashlight was carried by English Bobby Harold Turham, who retired in 1948, and his beat was London, England. So that light has a lot of history to it. I mean, when they had the Blitz and everything else during World War II, that Bobby was carrying that flashlight. And I like the shotgun down below, and I will let Harley tell the story of that shotgun because he would know it very well.
Yeah, way back in the day when we had Harley Davidson motorcycles, which actually unfortunately predated my time, they had Remington 870 shotguns that would actually fit when they were, of course, and they would fit in the saddlebags of the Harley Davidson. They switched to Kawasaki's right before I started motorcycle patrol, and the 870 wouldn't fit in the Kawasaki saddlebag. So I had this particular Rossi. It's a 12 gauge side-by-side 3-inch Magnum. We had the barrels and had a pistol grip mounted on it, dual triggers, exposed hammers. It fit in the Kawasaki saddlebag. I did fire a couple of shots from that, and it's been sitting in the cabinet or somewhere in the Sheriff's Department ever since. It was something we never carried. It just, not something we want to shoot.
Yes, and this photo here is from 1957, and this is Sergeant Harry Hogan, who is showing the Thompson to a group of junior deputies. And the Junior Deputies was a youth program started in 1955 by Sheriff Klager, and it was designed to combat juvenile delinquency and acquaint teenagers with law enforcement. The program was so successful it ran all the way through 1972. It ended during the Postal administration, and from that program came many deputy sheriffs, police officers, lawyers, judges. It really did a lot to help young men become responsible, citizens and adults. I was actually a junior deputy, so I've been around this department for a long, long time.
And at one point you're also a senior deputy.
Yes, that's it, right. This wall over here is the wall. What we do with this, the Sheriff's Department does contract policing. Well, when they talk to townships about what we provide in the way of policing, this wall shows what it is. There's everything on here from the honor guard to hostage negotiation to the mounted unit to K9, community engagement, emergency management. It's all here. Everything they have that they do, each unit's on here with a little synopsis of it. And this would be the sheriff. This will be changed. Sheriff Clayton will come down and Sheriff Dyer will be put up. And one thing, that's something else I should mention. She is the first female sheriff. She ties Sheriff Harvey for being the youngest sheriff. When Sheriff Harvey was sworn in, he was 34 years old, as was she. So eventually her picture and bio will go up there as leader of the agency. And we move down here, we have the mounted unit display. This is an actual mounted unit uniform, dress uniform, complete with Stetson. The Stetson belonged to Robert Randolph, who was a detective and worked here at the agency and retired from here. And the interesting thing about him is that he was a reporter for the Ypsilanti Press. And Sheriff Harvey came to him and says, "Why don't you quit writing about crime and come fight it?" And so there is a photograph of him with his notebook and pencil in hand and a revolver and badge in the other. And that's his Stetson, which was donated by his son. The saddle here is a period saddle from the 1960s. They used Western saddles, and so that is a saddle like what they would have worn on their horses. And of course, as you could see in those photographs, there's more mounted unit people then than there are now. There was a bunch of horse lovers back then, quite a few of them. They participated in the Pony Express ride across the state, where they would deliver a message all the way across the state by horse. They did a lot of work with finding lost people. The last rescue they had was a gentleman with Alzheimer's, and the mounted unit found him out in the field. And that's what this monitor does right here. This monitor shows you current things. This is all current events. Because like I say, the people that are working here now are the people that will make the history for later. And we have a honor from Debbie Dingle, who is the state or the federal representative. She commemorated our History Hall with a proclamation, and that was read into the congressional record. When you move down here, this is a tribute to our Marine Division and our underwater rescue. This was a vest that was worn by Deputy Jerry Evans, who headed up the dive team at one period. And Scuba Steve, as I call him, is wearing period gear from back in the 60s, complete with oxygen tank and flippers and mask and all the different gauges. He does have a new hat on, which we thought looked nice on him. But what's interesting is a couple of the photos here. This display is for Richard Roost. Richard Roost was a master diver. He taught the dive team, he trained them, worked with them. He loved scuba diving. He had 2 scuba shops. He dove many of the shipwrecks on the Great Lakes. And this plate which the family donated to us, came from the shipwreck of the Andrea Doria. The Andrea Doria was a luxury liner, much like the Titanic. After the war, Italy had built this, and it was full of art and all kinds of, it was like a floating art museum. And it sank. It collided with a ship about 200 miles off the coast of New York and sank in 260 feet of water. Richard Roost wanted to dive that, and to divers, that's like the Mount Everest to mountain climbers. He was only 4 years old when this sank. He went to make the dive. He made his first dive to acclimate himself. Then he made a second dive and went into the china cabinet and brought out cups and saucers. And he made a third dive, but something happened on the third dive and he passed away. He was found in the first class bar under a table, and I'm not sure what happened to him, but he lost his life on that third dive. So for years, this plate, this picture, and this plaque hung in a hallway, but nobody really knew his story. So Under Sheriff Potasic came to me and said, could you do something to tell the story of Richard Roost? So I did the research on it, put it all together, and what was handling that plate when I took it out of the frame it was in scared me half to death, because I sure didn't want to break it. And when I took all this in to be framed, we went to Michael's framing shop, and the lady says, did you look at this plaque? And I said, well, yeah, I've looked at it before. Ironically, the date we had this framed was the date he died, July 8th. So a little side story there. The flag up above it was donated by a doctor who has doctored the divers for a long time. He served in Afghanistan, and that was one of the last flags to fly over a base in Afghanistan. He wanted us to have it. He donated it to us, and we put it on display up here. And this other picture, which is what I find is interesting, when you look at the technology of the dive team today with sonar and everything else, this is the Sheriff's Water Rescue Unit, a boat and a car, and 3 officers. And they had grappling hooks in the boat. So you can kind of see how we've changed from, we upgraded here in the 50s. That's George Peterson out there in front of the jail on Ann Street with one of their boats, and nowadays equipment and everything else. So it's very, very different. Over here is the Sheriff's Department from 73 through 76, and this is a period when Sheriff Postel wanted this to be known as the Sheriff's Police. And so we see this here, and this is an interesting display right over here. We call it Firsts, and it's the first African Americans and what they did within this agency. And the first African American command officer was Joe Hall, and this is his actual badge, an ID card that says detective on it. He was a detective at the Sheriff's Department. And Sheriff Harvey promoted all his detectives to corporals because he wanted them to be in control of the crime scene, and he knew deputies couldn't give deputies orders. So you have the first black female officer, which is Jenny Jones, the first black, or I should say African American sergeant, Sabrina Patillo, the first African American mounted unit, which was Eugene Rush, the first African American sheriff, which is Jerry Clayton, and that's his original ID card. We also have the first African American jail administrator, and which was under the Postel administration. And up here we have the first African American officer, which was Elmer Fish. So we put that all together to kind of commemorate that and to remember it, because really it's something that probably there never should have been firsts. Everybody should have just been equal, but that's the way the world is, and so we commemorate those people that step forward. And you come down here, we have a cabinet with various displays in it. Some of the radio equipment, the old radars, which we used to bungee cord to the dashboard. We have a set of hand irons, which back in the day, that photograph there, when the jail was at 119 Ann Street, the county building was across the street. So when it come time for court, they would just chain everybody together and walk them across the street over to the county building. And you'll see right here some pictures from inside the old jail, in addition to a picture of the old county courthouse. That's an actual brick from the jail. And what you have is also in here is a display up here which shows the dispatch through the years. And the revolving light came off the top of vehicle 91, which is one of the transport vans, and was donated by Mike Williams, just like the vehicle 62 Globe, which is down there. Back in the day, all we had was globes on top of the car, and I could tell you a story how I took a globe off the top of a car with a garage door down in the jail, but we won't go into that at the moment. This is our donor board. Anybody who donates anything or helps us and supplies us with anything, we put them on this board. And the idea is not only to say thank you to them for what they've done, but also so their names don't get forgotten. As time goes on, the agency continues on, and you leave or retire or pass away, and nobody remembers who you are. So the idea is that we would remember people, and that's kind of the purpose of this hallway, is to remember people, remember events, and remember some of the things that they've done. This is Sergeant Aleo standing in front of the old Dexter station, which used to stand where the gazebo is now. And we just found it interesting to talk about police stations because this is Dom's Donuts, which on Washtenaw Avenue, which was affectionately known by many of us who worked over in Ypsi as Station 8. And I can tell you a story. I had Sergeant Swope was my first sergeant, and he always said on the midnight shift, he said, "Gentlemen, please, before you go to Dom's for coffee, would you go over and at least drive through a neighborhood so people know you're working?" Well, he always kidded us about it, and we tried to do what he was a good guy. And we went over one time, and here he was. His car was sitting at Dom Donuts, and we were all laughing about it. And of course, there's 3 sheriff's cars lined up for coffee for the drive-up window. When we pulled up to the drive-up window, the guy who handed us the coffee was Sergeant Swope, and he got his briefing sheet out, and he says, "If I can't beat you, I will join you." And he did briefing from the window at Dom's drive-up. So this is a period motorcycle uniform. For the longest, for a period of time, the Sheriff's Department had a motor unit. This was donated by Mike Oldersdorf. It's an actual uniform. There's no any replication on it. It's an actual uniform that he wore, complete with gun belt and helmet and leather bow tie, just like the CHP officers. Has his badge and ID on it, and he was one of the first displays we put up in here with the mannequins was this uniform.
I want to back up just a little bit to the
Sure.
Substation in Dexter. You got Sergeant Aleo, who was the command officer of the Dexter contract at the time. That station was interesting in that, for 2 reasons. Actually 3. Number 1, it was really small, but number 2, it had the fire siren. You can't see it in the picture there, but it had the siren to alert the volunteer firemen that something was going on right on top of the building, and it would get rather loud when you're in the building. There were 2 desks in there, and in order to get to the John, you actually couldn't sit at one of the desks. So it was a tiny little station. Spent some time in that station way back when.
I never was in that station. I was in the other one, which was now it's was a restaurant, and I think now it's a jewelry store or something.
Yeah, that one actually started out as the Dexter Library. I think it might have been City Council once upon a time, and again, I spent several years in that one, and when it snowed, it generally snowed harder inside that station than it did outside. So, interesting little place.
Yes, it was. This is, we put this up for the junior deputies. The Sheriff's Department has always been involved with youth in one form or another, but this was a program that really did a lot to acquaint kids with law enforcement. We had everybody come, they'd have a weekly meeting, you had to stand inspection, you had a uniform, and you treasured your badge because it was issued to you by the sheriff in a graduation ceremony. Mine actually was a replica, or not replica, it was the original badge that deputies used to wear in the 1960s before they went to the state shield. So it didn't say junior deputy on it, it said deputy sheriff, and I put that in my shadow box. I hung on to that like grim death. and it was issued to me by Sheriff Harvey. And we had everybody come to these meetings. William Tremmel, the reporter for the Ann Arbor News, would come and talk about his job as a crime reporter. We had people from the motor unit, the tactical mobile unit. We were used to actually go out and search some crime scenes. They would line us up in a long line, and we'd walk through fields. I personally remember going out to one of the scenes where John Norman Collins had murdered a young lady, and the state police had dug up the ground looking for a bullet, and they didn't find it, and they wanted to try again. So we went out and to that area, and they took 3 of us with sifters, gloves, and trowels. And Pete Kerr, who was a detective, came out with a World War II mine detector, and he kept sweeping the ground, and we kept digging. And we didn't find any bullets. We found some bottle caps and a few other things, some loose change, but that was pretty much it. But for a kid 15 years old, that was pretty exciting stuff, and to be a part of that investigation. This is one of the flags from one of the units. Each city or community had their own unit, and there was an Ypsi chapter, an Ann Arbor chapter, a Saline chapter. And like I say, it was quite the event, quite something to be involved in. This would be from the period of 1977 to 1984. This would have been pretty much under under Sheriff Postel, and he left, and at that point they had Sheriff Minnick come in. And so then they changed their logo again to Sheriff's Patrol rather than Police. And what's interesting about this is the female uniform. And this uniform was worn by Pam Reese. The first female officer was Madeline Klotz, who was sworn into Sheriff Osborne. And that's her seated right there, and you can see here's a picture of this is Herb Hollis with 2 of the records people, and you can see the skirts that they're wearing. This is Mrs. Hollis, Babe Hollis, and that hat was the kind of hat that they wore with the uniform. And the interesting thing about this is they didn't really know what to do with women. If they went out and rode, they rode in skirt and shirt, and they carried their gun in a saddlebag over their shoulder. It wasn't until probably later in the 70s that they started equipping them much like the men in the same way, and it was probably much more practical. But what's interesting here is the pig lapel pin. Again, we talked about the pig bowl. Sheriff Harvey issued those to all his people and told them to wear them. He said, because even though the people on the street call you a pig, it stands for pride, integrity, and guts. And he says, and we play the pig bowl. He says, we're all pigs. And they all wore those lapel pins. If you move down here, we have another monitor. This monitor basically shows, we call it The Way We Were. It's kind of a now and then. It'll show pictures of the old jail on Ann Street on the interior, and then compare it to what we have now. It tells the story of the mounted unit. This is them riding. They're searching for clues at one of the murder scenes from John Norman Collins. And it has all these different things so people can kind of look at it and get an idea of what it was like then, what it is now. And so that's what that monitor shows. Behind you, you have, this is very interesting. This is a period radio from the 1940s and 50s. And this radio was actually in a sheriff's department car. It was donated by the family of Max Pete. Max Pete was a deputy sheriff. He eventually became a detective. And back in the days when he was a detective, they didn't have pagers, they didn't have cell phones. So they put this radio in his car. This is an actual working radio. If we had a manual, we could hook it up and make it work. It has all the parts with it. And so when they needed him to take pictures or assist at a crime scene, they called him on the radio. And his children remember riding with him in the car on the radio, and they thought that was very exciting. And the interesting thing about this is they located them in boxes in the trunk called coffin boxes, and the boxes are made out of copper. And they would have those boxes in there, one to receive, one to transmit. The transmitter, this black box in here on the transmitter, is actually a generator which spins up to 5,700 RPM. And so what would happen is, I've talked to Sheriff Harvey, who recalls using these. He said you would key these up, and when you did, he said the whole back of the car would vibrate and the headlights would go dim, and if they didn't have it wired up right and you were touching the car when they keyed up the microphone to transmit, it'd give you a shock. And that's because it needed more voltage to transmit than to receive. Nowadays we talk about joint dispatch ventures, but actually Jacob Andrews and Sheriff Osborne, working together with Ann Arbor PD, brought about a kind of a joint dispatch venture. You can see right here a tower that's being constructed. This is behind the old Ann Arbor Fire Station, which is now the Hands-On Museum. That tower stood 260 feet. There was a transmitter and receiver located in City Hall in Ann Arbor, and they ran cables down to the Sheriff's Department, and then they ran, Ann Arbor had their own, and they had 2 different frequencies, and then that's how they dispatched their cars. So really there was kind of a joint dispatch venture, even though they didn't dispatch the same. We have up here, this is a very interesting display. This is Sheriff Osborne's original badge that he carried as undersheriff for 10 years and then carried as sheriff for 10 years. And the family donated this to us for display. This is Sheriff Osborne in his unmarked car up here. You can see it right there from the period. That's him in his World War I uniform and from when he chased Pancho Villa on the border. And here he is as sheriff, entertaining a delegation from nationalist China. And down here with Vincent Fox, and Vincent Fox was the head of the Identification Bureau that was started under Sheriff Andrews, and the idea was to track the people that come through the jail. Everybody gets an Identification Bureau number or an IB number. They still use that system today. This cell door was donated by Irv Hollis and his family, and this came from the Ann Street Jail. This is an actual cell door from the Ann Street Jail, and if you'd ever been in that jail, it was built in 1934 and stayed in operation till 1978, and everything in it was done by cranks and levers. You would go to a box, you would open the box, and you'd look in and yell for the inmate. He would come to the door, you'd crank the door open, and then you'd let him out of the next door by pulling a lever. It was, I worked there at age 17. I was in there and worked as a cadet, and it was quite an experience. You always expected to see one of these actors like Jimmy Cagney or George Raft or Humphrey Bogart coming around the corner doing an inmate deal. It was just that way. But it eventually went out of service. This is the lettering from the side of the building. It said Washtenaw County Jail. The Board of Commissioners didn't like that hanging up there when they did their meetings, and the building was empty. So they had that removed, and we recovered this. It was donated by Frank Combs. The wanted pictures.
With food service.
The wanted pictures here, or posters, are the actual posters that hung at the Sheriff's Department. They were recovered from a desk at the Sheriff's Department when they moved out of the Ann Street facility, and they are actual wanted posters. That's how the FBI back in the day, they would, or the state would send you these. And I managed to locate a gentleman that had a $100 reward on him. He was of course passed away, and I wanted to send a picture of the tombstone to the state and see if they pay me, but I don't think they would. So we used this period-looking bulletin board, and we hung it up there, plus some information about the various items on display. Behind you, you have a couple of things. This over here, the Sheriff's Department and the local police agencies, again, to raise money for fallen officers, the burn unit, and other charities, sat there and formed a hockey team. Sheriff Scheibel played on the hockey team. Chief William Zenick, who was a Detroit police officer and later became chief of police in Manchester and in Milan, he coached, and they had a hockey team and they played games, and some of the games they played were like against the Red Wing alumni, and Alex Delvecchio. And this is a letter that was written to Chief Zenik, basically sitting there thanking him for the fundraising effort that he did to raise money for a fallen officer. So we wanted to put that on display to show that, you know, we went from football to hockey, but basically the purpose was the same: make the county better and serve the community. If we go here, we now have door shields from the 1984 through 92. That would be the Scheibel administration. Minnick and Scheibel were the two sheriffs at that period of time. And you can't see it very well, but that's Lieutenant Sutton sitting inside that vehicle. And we also have here a commemoration of Flight 255, which was the flight that crashed on Middle Belt Road. And a lot of our deputies and reserves and Marine deputies went down there to help with that project. It was very horrific. Lots of debris, human remains that had to be protected while the investigation and recovery efforts went on, and a lot of our deputies went down. This was donated to us by Lieutenant Brian Miller. Right here is one of the few group pictures from the 1984 to 85. The Sheriff's Department has never taken very many group photos, and it's a shame that they don't. But I imagine with a department of 350 people, it's kind of hard to get them all together. But this has everybody on it that worked during that period. And the sheriff asked me to get it framed up. It was had been sitting for a long time in the records division. The frame was broke on it, and he said, could I get it framed and hung? And we put it together and have it hanging up here during the period in which they served. Kind of commemorate them. I don't know, are you on that, Harley?
Yep.
I think I have too. I'm down at the bottom. I'm right there, and I can't find you. I know you're in here. Above the 85. Oh yeah, there you are, right there.
Back when I actually had hair.
Didn't we all? Behind you is a architect's rendition. When they built the new jail, they bought this property out here. It was the Holy Ghost Seminary. And for the longest time, the offices of the Sheriff's Department were in the seminary, and the jail was over here. And eventually they built this new building, and this is what it looks like back in the 1978s when they put it all together. It's not like that now. It's quite different. And over here, this would be the period from 92 through 2008. We had a helicopter at that time.
That was the second helicopter, actually.
That was the second, right? The first one was a little small, looked like from the movie, like the show MASH type helicopter, a small bubble with an engine on it.
And that one actually did an inverted water landing at one point.
Yes, it did. Yes, it did. It crashed. There was a...
No, inverted water landing.
Inverted water landing, okay. But we have various pictures from the period. We have, I like this one. It's Skip Brewster, who was kind of the department Santa Claus. He was out. We were delivering Christmas presents to an officer's family who had lost his life due to illness. And I took that picture at Station 7, and I liked it so much I thought I'd put it in there. And that is basically our hallway. We have another display out in the lobby I told you about. We had another cabinet full of awards for our mounted division and for our canine unit. We also have plaques for Washtenaw 100 Officers of the Year. We have a time capsule which won't be open for till 2015. Or not, no, it was 2015, it was sealed. It's going to be open 2030. My apologies. We have over here a plaque that has all the names of all the sheriffs on it. And next to it is a plaque that was donated by the junior deputies back when we lost the officers that we had seen in the Hall of Honor. They donated that plaque to remember their names. And so we put it in there. We have a detective by the name of Kevin Parvez, who is a very talented artist. He learned to paint as a child and made a living driving a cab in New York and selling paintings. This painting is actually a painting of the Washtenaw County Sheriff's Office and Jail, which was located at 119 Ann Street. And he painted it. Here's an explanation about what he had done right here. He always does this, writes up a little something to put with it to explain it. But he took pictures of the building and then painted the picture for us there. And he has done that. He's painted many different pictures. The other one over there, which is kind of a now and then picture, he painted this from different looks. This is deputies standing out in front of the old Willow Run Village station, the county jail here, the new jail, and him. This is his self-portrait right there. This is the building as it is today, the building as it was then, and the deputies as it was from back in the 1940s. So, and he's pretty talented. He paints a lot of these pictures. It's really something to see. We have one other thing over here, which is a display of badges, which was donated by Mike Oldersdorf. And it basically is badges from different units, periods, and along with the shoulder patches that all have been worn throughout years. This is the Dudley Garden, and it's called the Dudley Garden because after Kay Dudley, who was a corrections officer and a very nice person, she did all kinds of things for the officers and deputies of the department. She started a bereavement fund by locating a couple of vending machines down in the lobby of the jail, and the money that came out of the vending machines was used to do steak fries on holidays and to buy flowers or make donations when there was a birth of a child. She was very well thought of, and when this building was originally built, there was a little nook right here that they called the Dudley Garden after she retired. It was commemorated with a plaque by Sheriff Scheibel and a dedication service. When they did the remodeling, this was all removed and we didn't know where to put it and what to do with it. I took a walk with Under Sheriff Potasic and we decided that we would make a garden here in honor of Kay. And the interesting thing about this garden is, if we walk up here, you'll see the plaques on the wall. There are two plaques, which one is for Sheriff Andries, one is for Sheriff Irwin Klager. And both passed away in office, but not in the line of duty. So we decided we'd mount those out there, and the plaque in the middle was created by Arnett's, and what that is any person who works here at the Sheriff's Department that passes away while they're an employee, their name goes up on that plaque so they don't get forgotten. There are people who died of illness, accidents, or other issues, and they are on that plaque so that we remember them and don't forget them. The garden was created by two corrections officers who had landscaping skills. It is maintained by me. It used to be maintained by the work program, but they don't have that anymore, so I am the chief gardener. We did put a display up. We try to hang things appropriate for the holidays. Right now we have a tribute to our veterans with service flags out here, and after spring we'll change it again with flowers and different things, so we try to keep it up, and we do have some lighting in here to light things up. And this is the Dudley Garden.
And I really want to thank retired Corporal Harry Valentine for the almost a decade's worth of work he's put into all of the honoring of the history of more than 200 years, well actually just 200 years of history of the Washtenaw County Sheriff's Department. And I don't know if this captures any of that or not, but this is the new facility, well, remodeled facility. And it's a shame that some of this, just because of the changing of the guard, some of that history is going to be going away, and we wanted to at least commemorate that forever in film. So again, Harry, thank you so much for all you have done to put all this together and for taking the time to help memorialize it here.
Well, thank you for coming out and filming it. I didn't have any record of it until now, so thank you.
Well, amateur editing, but we'll see where it goes.
Okay.
Again, thanks again.
You're welcome.